Hello everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to do Rose Quartz. It's going to be a little complicated because I'm going to use a lot of products because I think I'm addicted to products, but it'll still be fun and it will look really pretty. So stick around. I did realize that I'm probably supposed to be asking you guys to subscribe to my channel in every video. So if you could do that, that would be great. I need to figure out like a cool way to ask you guys to do that every time. But yeah, for now I'm just gonna put that there. And yeah, moving on. I'm gonna start with this color. It's called Sip Happens. It's from the Lac-it gel polish range. This color actually was one of the first colors that I ever was introduced to in the Lac-it range by my nail instructor. I just think it's such a pretty, girly, posh pink color. And this is like one layer of about 10 layers. That's an exaggeration, but so this doesn't have to be super perfect, but I am trying to make it very thin and as even as I can. But again, not worrying if there are a few stroke lines here and there. I'm gonna go in with Simply Connect, using it as a blooming gel. And I'm gonna make this really thin. I found over the few months of using this as a blooming gel that if I make it too thick, then it gets really bulbous on the sides, because as you add more and more gel to it, it just gets thicker and thicker as it tries to level out. So make it super thin. It still is there and it still provides that really slippery layer for the gel to spread out on, but it's not in the way. Okay, I'm just going through all of these again to make sure that the layer's super smooth. And as I go, I'm scraping off the gel into the bottle from my brush and then pulling down, making sure it's really smooth, and then I'm scraping off the excess that comes off back into the bottle. Another reason why you want each layer to be as thin as possible is because we're going to do a lot of layers in order to create dimension, because this is a three-dimensional stone that we're trying to replicate. So the thinner the layers, the thinner the nail overall will be. We want to make it look like it has a lot of dimension to it, but we don't actually want it to be thick. In addition to subscribing to my channel and liking this video, if you guys could leave a comment down below of things that you are inspired by that you would like to see turned into nail art, that would be great. I'm really into taking pieces of art or pieces of nature or just general iconic designs and turning them into nail art. I think it's just a really fun way to find something that's unique and interesting. Okay, moving on. Not curing that yet. Now I'm gonna put some Nearly Nude on a palette. I'm gonna take some on my brush and just kind of spreading it onto the nail in random patterns, trying to mimic the cracks that you see in the rose quartz, but not being too precise about it, because this again is gonna be one of many background layers. I've actually never tried this technique before. This is just something I thought of on the fly. So if this doesn't turn out, I'm still gonna post the video, but it might not be, I don't know, exactly what I expected. That's fine. I'm focusing on where I'm putting these splotches of light pink. I don't want any nail to look exactly like another one. And I really, really don't need a ton. We're just using a teeny bit of product here. Again, because we don't want it to be too bulbous. And as we add product to this layer, it's gonna rise in places and it's gonna be uneven. My goal is to add a layer of dimension without making it too bumpy. Another thing I'm focusing on is the direction of this layer. I'm going in this direction across all the nails diagonally. And each layer we're gonna go in a slightly different direction so that as the layers build up, it's gonna look even more three-dimensional. Now for the thumb, I'm actually gonna go in the opposite direction. I've just found that it looks more pleasing when they're actually on a hand. It looks more pleasing if the design is going in the opposite direction that the other fingers are going. Let me show you what this looks like. It's really, really subtle, but as we build it up, it will look more and more like an actual piece of stone. Now we're going to add this color called All Steamed Up. Putting that down on the palette because we're going to use a brush to apply it. I'm not removing the sticky layer from the previous layer that we did because I'm intending for this next layer to also be a little bit runny and flowy. So the sticky layer that's already on here will help to spread out this next layer as well. But we don't want it spread out so much that we are going to use a blooming gel on this layer. We want it to be a little more concentrated. So we're going to go in between by not removing the sticky layer. Okay, so on the thumb, we went this way, remember? So now we're going to come across the nail this way. And I'm going to do random strokes. Some are going to be straighter and some are going to be more curved. And we're just gonna kind of, okay, so now I've got that. I'm going to now wipe off my brush and spread it out, spread out just on one side. Wipe off my brush again. We're gonna spread it out on this side now. And we're doing this so that the gel has permission to kind of feather out on one side of the line that we've created, while staying a little more structured on the other side of the line. Okay, now we're going to go into all the other nails. These nails, remember, we did in this direction, so now we're going to go across the nail with the white in this direction. This technique that we're doing right here will give the impression that there are cracks, and the closer the crack is to the surface, the more sharp it appears. So as each crack, and the cracks aren't going straight this way, they're kind of on an angle. And so as the stone cracks, and it cracks at an angle, the part of the crack that's deeper into the stone will be more blurry and less defined, and the part of the crack that's closest to the surface of the stone is way more defined and is a lighter color. So that's why we're blending out only one side of these white lines that we're doing here to give the impression that it's a crack that's actually going through the nail. Okay, for this next layer, we actually do want it to be a little bit more precise. So I'm going to go in with a paper towel and some acetone and wipe off the sticky layer of each of these tips. Okay, now that that's done, I'm going to take white, put some on my palette, and take a really tiny line brush. We're gonna go in and define the closest part of the crack on the layer we just did, if that makes any sense at all. And we're going to follow the lines that we did in the previous layer. Again, it doesn't have to be exact, and you can even add more lines than just what is there. A jar of yeast. No, I'm just kidding. We're gonna put some acetone in here. I would prefer to use alcohol, but COVID, so alcohol is nowhere to be found right now. But I have acetone, so we're gonna use that. Okay, I'm gonna take some acetone and a smaller fine line brush and dip into that. Okay, so I'm going into the acetone and I'm just barely tapping in the direction that we faded out on the previous layer. As I tap with this acetone soaked brush, the gel will diffuse a bit and create a more natural look. Okay, so important thing here is to remember to fade out in the direction of the previous layer. And this might remove some of the line, and that's totally fine. It actually helps to make it look more natural and random. Another way to think about it is to think of light on light. So we're gonna fade in the direction that is lightest. I hope that didn't just confuse you more. Okay, I really like that. So I'm gonna stick this in the lamp. And there's really not a lot of gel on there, so it doesn't need to cure for long. But while that's curing, I'm just gonna go ahead and start working on the next one. By varying the amount of alcohol that you have on your brush, you can control how much the white fades. So I have quite a bit on my brush right now, and as I tap, it's fading quite a bit. But let me show you, once I don't have a lot on my brush, and I tap here, it doesn't fade quite as much. And I can kind of really control how much that really pulls out. I personally like the way it looks when I have more acetone, but I mean, it's obviously up to you as an artist. You can vary the amount of liquid that you have here to create a completely different texture. I know there are a lot of other tutorials about rose quartz nail art design, and a lot of them are actually much easier than this one is turning out to be. But I feel like sometimes you want to do this crazy custom set, not just for, clients or whatever, but sometimes I like to make things complicated, if that makes sense. I don't know. I don't know if anyone else is like that, but I'm a fan of really complicated nail art. So now, I think maybe this is my final layer, or close to my final layer. Not quite sure. I guess we'll see what it looks like after I put it on. I'm gonna do a really, really, really thin layer of Nearly Nude, which is the same color that we used in a previous layer. We wanna make this really thin so that we can take advantage of its transparency to still show the design that we just worked so hard on. Okay, and I'm gonna go through and do the same thing that I did when I put down the blooming gel and just really thin this out before I stick it in the lamp. Okay, now that that's done curing for a full minute, I'm gonna go through again and do the exact same thing that we just did for the last 2 layers, but instead of going this direction on the thumb and this direction on the rest of the fingers, I'm gonna go the opposite direction. So I'm gonna go this direction on the thumb and this direction on all of the fingers. And that will help to really bring in the whole rose quartz deep cracks look. Now that I've done that second layer of white, I'm going to go in again with the Nearly Nude, just like we did before, and do a super thin layer on all of the nails. Okay, so now that we've done that for the second time, we're going to accentuate that last layer that we just did. I'm not making these lines very thick. See how little I'm putting on the brush? I'm really scraping all that off, just leaving a teeny bit on, really not a ton. And we're just gonna go in, we're not gonna accentuate all of it, just some of these cracks, if you will. Maybe the ones that are most prominent, the ones that stand out the most to me are the ones that I'm going to accentuate. We're just making the lines as thin as we possibly can. And we're only accentuating the most recent layer that we did. These lines are going to be so thin that they almost look like they're part of the previous layer. Let me phrase it this way. These lines represent the very moment where this crack meets the surface of the stone. So it's got to be super thin as you can get it, so that it looks like it's connected to that other crack. In fact, if you really wanted to, you could go in and diffuse these as well. Okay, so now that we've got that done, I'm gonna go in with Simply Shine. This is part of this system. There's a builder in a bottle that goes with it as well. This is the top coat. I'm gonna use this top coat because it's a little thicker and it will help to even out the bumps from all of the different layers that we've done. I'm also trying to make this layer pretty thin because there's already so many layers, but I am gonna do a little bit of evening out where it absolutely needs it. We're gonna do another trick after this is done curing. And I'm going to wear a glove while I buff because I've got pretty nails on right now and I don't want to ruin them, which often happens. It obviously looks amazing with a matte finish, but I don't know, sometimes I just need something super shiny, you know? So we're gonna go in with another layer of the shine and then we will be donezo.